Okay, well, I think we should get started. So appreciate everyone for being here and taking the time on this beautiful Friday. I know we got an exciting Tiger Cats game tonight here in Hamilton. Obviously, game one of the World Series as well. So can imagine a lot of people here on the call or webinar are going to be ducking out early from work, which is totally okay. But appreciate everyone being here and taking the time, as I said. So my name is Mike Hartle. I'm the Vice President of Marketing and Membership Engagement here at the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. And we've had a really exciting small business week. Hopefully, a lot of you on the webinar have been able to join us for each of the sessions. We've had a great mix of presentations and topics covered throughout the week. And I don't want to disrespect any of our other presenters, but I'll say it here. We saved the best for last. We got Stephanie Van Dam from Sandler with us with a great topic she's going to be diving in on today. So um, with that, I would like to actually kick it off by introducing Keith Russell, the Senior Business Development Officer at Hamilton Economic Development. We're proudly partnering with on this Small Business Week initiative. Keith, say a couple words, and then we'll toss it over to Steph.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I'm going to start off with the Go Jays, of course, because I'm really excited about tonight. But more importantly, happy Small Business Week, everybody. This week, of course, we celebrate the heart of Hamilton's economy, our small businesses. Hamilton, as mentioned, Economic Development is pleased to sponsor this week's small business webinar in partnership with, of course, the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. More than 90% of Hamilton's businesses are small businesses, driving growth, creating jobs, and shaping the character of our community. In fact, Hamilton is home to more than 16,400 plus small businesses, supported by a wonderful ecosystem that includes our Hamilton business, our business improvement areas, or our BIAs, Hamilton Economic Development, the Hamilton Business Center, and of course the Hamilton Chamber of Commerce. As was mentioned, my name is Keith Russell. I'm a Senior Business Development Officer, and I join you today in partnership with Hamilton Economic Development and the Hamilton Business Center, also referred to as the HBC. The Hamilton Business Center is a section within the Hamilton Economic Development team in partnership with the Ministry of Economic Development, Job Creation, and Trade. We're located on the first floor of City Hall. Most people still don't know that, but we're just kind of tucked away in the corner. And we like to be known as your one-stop source for small business guidance and professional advice on starting or running a small business in the city. We provide an array of services to support and foster business startup and scale up, of course, across Hamilton and surrounding area. So a few of the things that we offer real quickly is free one-on-one consultation. So if you're looking to get some advice or just some consultation around preparing a business plan, a marketing strategy, or you're just exploring rules and regulations as they pertain to your industry, we can certainly help. If you're a new business in the city that's, has questions or challenges around the regulatory process of starting a business in the city, definitely stop by and, bend our ear about that. We'd love to help. We provide free access to marketing and legal experts for all business matters through our Access to Professionals programs. Together with Commercial District Section, the Hamilton Business Center also provides a number of financial incentives to support your success, primarily through our Starter Company Plus program. And of course, we offer lots of networking and opportunities to support your success. So please just drop by anytime and we'd be happy to chat. Thanks, everybody.
Well said, Keith. Thank you. And I think without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce Stephanie Van Dam. And if you've been to any of our chamber networking events or events in general, Stephanie's a very familiar face. I'm sure a lot of you on the call have met her and chatted with her in person. But for those of you who don't know Stephanie, she is a seasoned sales leader and the proud owner of Sandler Hamilton, where she helps business owners and teams build sales systems that actually work. She has over 20 years of experience, and she's known for her practical, no fluff approach to driving growth and developing strong leaders. She's a Hamilton resident since 2018 and is passionate about the community and her clients. She's a volunteer with the United Way Halton in Hamilton, Food for Kids Hamilton, and on the YWCA's Philanthropy Committee for the Women of Distinction Awards. As the only female Sandler franchise owner in Canada, she brings a bold, trailblazing perspective to leadership and business development. Steph's work blends grit, heart, and a deep commitment to helping people and companies reach their full potential. And not surprising, she feels right home here in Hamilton. So just wanted to, and those of you who joined us right off the top, you kind of heard us mentioning the chat and the Q&A feature. I just want to make sure everyone's on the same page. If at any point you have a question for Stephanie throughout her presentation, there's a big Q&A button at the bottom of your Zoom screen there. So feel free to input your questions. Stephanie gets alerted on her end and she'll answer them when it fits into her presentation. So I've got a stash of Halloween candy here. I'm going to go on, hide my camera, go on mute, and Stephanie, let you take over with the screen share, but really looking forward to it.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mike and Keith. Appreciate the introduction. Alrighty, everybody. So we're going to do a little renegade here today, because I know I've got some feedback and I love to get feedback from people when we're in here. So first of all, thank you for having me, and I appreciate being here. And I realize that for some of you, gosh, Friday afternoon at the end of Small Business Week, right? Are we doing okay? Are we doing okay? And I am what stands between you and perhaps some pre-gaming for the Blue Jays, your Friday evening activities, or of course the Ticats game. So here we go. Let's get into it. Let me stop share. Let me get back into it. Sorry, guys. Here we go. Are we ready? Are we ready to go here? There we go. So this is what we're going to be talking about today. And so in the next 45 minutes-ish, talking about better managers and better teams. And one of the things that I see so much is how we need to be able to communicate better. I can be able to support your team in terms of a sales or customer service environment, but we all know that without the reinforcement of the leadership, we need to be able to that training or that efforts, they all go by the wayside. So here are 4 things that I see often, really high level, and wanting to give you guys a lot of information about what you can do as leaders, and maybe it'll be good reminders for you. Perhaps you're a new leader and you haven't seen any of this before. So these 4 categories. So we know that was a great intro or bio from Mike. So my quote here at the bottom, I love this: success comes from wisdom, wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from mistakes. And we've all made some of those, but I want us to feel welcome to do that here. For those of you who don't know Sandler, Sandler is a global training organization. I am one of the representatives here and business owners here in Hamilton, and we train as an organization over 50,000 professionals annually. So we know that the content that we have here works. We know that it's in businesses across the world, and you can read the rest of this here. But if you've not been familiar with Sandler, I wanted to share some of that information with you. So here's the pitch, everybody. This is what the only pitch that you're going to get during this is talking about what does this look like. So if you're wanting to do the feedback form, get your phone ready, because I have a QR code on the next slide that's going to talk about what feedback I'd love to get from you. So I want to share with you that I want to get the feedback ahead of time, meaning I want to tell you I want to get the feedback ahead of time. The other part is, what does yes look like? The only pitch, if there is one that I'm going to give you, is to say, hey, Steph, this was great information. I'd love to have a 15-minute call with you. So let's schedule that. We'll see where it goes from there. Or, you know what, something as simple as send me the slides or add me to your bi-monthly email list. And I send you a newsletter every couple of weeks. Or I've got a couple of free events coming up for salespeople, why salespeople fail, as well as the science of ghosting and how good prospects disappear after great meetings. So if your sales team is experiencing ghosting, then that might be a good one to get into. On the feedback form, it says, send me that information. So when we're into the next, so here is the webinar series form, scan that, and you will be able to get access to that form. I will also show this to you towards the end of the session. If you, like I said, have any questions, please pop that into the chat or into the Q&A. Interrupt me at any time. I'm happy to have that. Now, what I do want us to use the Q&A for, we're going to use it a bit like a chat box, if we will. So can you please populate into the chat box? I'd like to know 2 things from everybody here. Can you share with me how many people report to you? And if you don't have anybody now, how many people do you want reporting to you in the next 6 to 12 months? And what industry or what departments report to you? Meaning, do you have somebody from sales? Do you have somebody from marketing? Do you have somebody from operations? Are they techs? And people that go out and do technical work. So can you pop into the Q&A as if you had a question, but fill in the question as it's the answer? How many people are reporting to you and what departments are they coming from? Beautiful consultants. Events. Yeah. Thanks, John, for doing that. Because not we've got to, sometimes it's good for us to know who's coming in or what we need to do to set up for a management role for 3 people in outreach. Okay. Okay. I love this. Thank you. Okay, perfect. So if you were looking at examples, then I'll try to be able to give examples as best as possible. So the 4 things you saw before, number 1 is clarity. And it may or may not surprise you how many people, leaders, managers believe that they have clarity when they don't. Especially as entrepreneurs, we feel like, well, I know, why don't they know? And so when we get into clarity, and before I get into that, I'm totally jumping on the sports bandwagon today. For every category, I'm going to have quotes from these 2 gentlemen. Hopefully you know John Schneider. If he's the, for those of you who don't know him, he is the, the manager and skipper, they might call him, coach of the Blue Jays. And of course, Scott Milanovich, who's the head coach of the Ticats. We all talk about how the Jays have 4 wins to get to the World Series. Well, what you may not know is the Ticats have 3 wins to get to the Grey Cup. Just saying. And that happens tonight. So, when we have clarity on things, so John talking about steps, John, I'm going to refer to them in first name as if we're friends, right? I don't know him. We still have the home field, right? This is our last series. We still have the home field advantage, right? We know what we've got to do. How great is it when you can say to your team, we know what we've got to do, and they have clarity on what their roles are. And when Scott talks about the turnover margin, single biggest factor in winning and losing, and we've been doing pretty well at it. So if you know what your objectives are, you know what measurements you need to look for, how wonderful is that to be able to get to your outcome? So it's important with clarity for us to determine what good looks like. Good in air quotes, because that could be a different definition for every one of our team members. We need to be able to set measurable, specific outcomes that we're able to identify as whether that's complete or not. It cannot measure effort. Effort does not yield us results or intention. We need to be able to have those observable outcomes. So we need to define what good looks like. We also need to be able to talk about mutual agreements. So we see this a lot. Project management is a great example of this, but what I hear a lot from people is that was a really good meeting. Or, yes, this project is complete. My job is complete, but the job really isn't complete because somebody else needed to take over. So how will we know when a project is complete? We need to create alignment and accountability for that. If we know what those things are, then we're able to hold somebody accountable for it. And then I like this last point about simplifying goalposts. So remove all of that ambiguity. The moment that you say to yourself, oh, they know, spoiler alert, they don't know, or they don't always know, because you need to outline all of the who, what, when, where, why, all of those things for every task and objective. A lot of the people, as we're hiring younger people into our organizations, right? If you think of, I'll say that millennial type generation, and this is not anything to do with millennials, except that they were given, when they went to school, an outline at the beginning of the year in their academic career of what good looked like. They have grown up with what good looked like. It was an outline for the entire year of this project equaled this percent. And now we have those people in our workforce. So it's important that we have to give them that information because that's what they know. That's how they know whether they're doing a good job or not? So for every category here, I'm going to jump in and say, well, this is what different options. Now, you might be doing these things already, or you're not, depends on what you want to do, but define and publish KPIs, key performance indicators, is what that acronym stands for. So define and publish what your KPIs are depending on the role that you've got. With sales, it tends to be, it lends itself to easier things, but maybe you need somebody to complete a task within a certain amount of time. Maybe for your customer service roles, you need to create a response time of 24 hours or less, whatever you want to do. But does everybody know how they're being measured? And are you tracking it? We also want to create definitions around different milestones within a project. So what is I've got something started, in progress, finished. For those of you who have people who need to maybe do some design work or are involved in bigger projects, where are we with a particular task? So a lot of confusion happens when I think something's good, somebody else says it's good, but our definitions are very different, right? Or if we're in progress, well, are we 50% in progress, 70% in progress, or 30% in progress? We need to create some clarity on that. And then we have decision gates or milestones, whatever we want to call them, gate selling. Having that checklist for any initiatives and process that you're establishing is key to be able to creating clarity. If we don't know, or worse than that, if your team does not know what success looks like, then it's really hard to hold them accountable to that. So, jumping into our next category of communication. And communication, when we're talking about this, communication covers all sorts of things, whether that is creating a culture of accountability or creating a culture of support. Having your coach say to you, you guys are the definition of selfless, is something that your team needs to hear. When I hear a quote about someone talking about this quote that Scott Milanovich said, to me, that's the best win we've had all year. Our people need to get that feedback from us, and we need to be able to communicate that to them. So what does communication look like here? So focus on what is heard, not what's said. How many of you have experienced, whether you've said this or your team has said this to you, well, that's not what I meant. I know I said that, but that's not what I meant. Or that's not what I heard. Or I didn't mean it that way. Or worse than that, you took it the wrong way. If that's what's happening in your world right now, I would like to invite you to engage with some of the things that are some of the suggestions that I have in just a second to pop up. But if you're hearing that, we need to create some structure and language around how do we communicate what we need to communicate, and how do we ensure that our team hears the message that we want them to hear. The second point here is something adapt through DISC. Now, DISC is a communication tool that measures or helps us understand how people give and receive information. Now, of course, I can provide you with a DISC assessment and DISC report, but you can also do this. It's online, right? I have one that's more exhaustive, but if you're wanting a free one, give up your email and be able to get free access to DISC. But it talks about DISC is a framework that talks about whether people are task-oriented or people-oriented, or whether they are active listeners and information givers, or more reserved. And so if many business owners tend to be more direct, right? But if we have someone who's very direct and then someone who's a little bit more passive, then if we are the leader that's giving it directly to somebody who's a little bit more reserved, then we can have some fireworks happen and not the ones that we want. So we need to be able to understand how our team gives and receives information so that we as leaders are able to adjust our style. And the other part that I love here is stay above the line of fear. Now, of course, in our current climate, there's a lot of uncertainty and a lot of fear going on. And so we have in this line below the fear, and for those who are in the world of sort of this psychology and human behavior, you might know this as the dynamic of empowerment, or the empowerment dynamic, or Cartman's drama triangle. But below the line of fear is a very the three characters that show up are the hero, the victim, and the villain. Now, the hero can show up and say something like, you know what, don't worry about it. I'll take care of it. I've got it. The victim might say something like, oh, God, you guys screw this up all the time. Um, I don't know how I'm going to get all this done. Or the villain is going to say something like, you know what, this is my company. I'm going to do it my way or the highway. So perhaps you've said that in a stressful moment in your life. Perhaps you've had a manager or a boss who's said that to you, and so you feel like that's how you need to communicate with people. If we're above the line of fear, the fear still exists. We're simply acknowledging it and using it to be able to create with our team. So we can look at it from a coaching perspective, co-creation, or challenging someone productively. So that might sound like, you know what, I get, I'm not quite sure what we're going to do either, but let's figure it out together. What do you need from me to be able to mitigate some of that risk? Love how you did this. I can see why you got there. Didn't quite hit the mark. Let's work through it together so you know what the standard is for next time. So there's definitely a shift here. Now, what I hear a lot of business owners say is, well, Stephanie, like, I do it the best, right? I am the one that needs to do it. I don't have enough people, or it takes me too long to teach them how to do it, so I'm just going to do it myself. And I mean, that's an option for sure. If you're wanting to do it that way, that's definitely an option. However, I am sure that's not why you got in your business. And if you're wanting to scale, you're going to need to invest the time to make sure that your team can do that for you so that you can focus on the things you need to focus on to accelerate and grow your business. So tips that we have here for you to increase communication. There's power in reinforcement. So confirm, 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 right? After every conversation you have with a team member to make giving instructions, it's what did you hear in that? What do you understand that you need to do? What's happening after this meeting? What's the standard we've set? Some sort of confirmation as to what you need to do, not just agreement, as in, do you know what you need to do? Yep, and off they go. You need to be able to get more information than that. Using that disc-based communication tool and or workshop to be able to go through it, have a better understanding as to how people receive information. If you are giving and receiving information that is in alignment with what you have, but it's a misalignment for one of your team, you could be unknowingly frustrating your team member. Now, I'm sure all of us know the phrase, right? People don't leave companies, they leave managers, right? What are we doing unintentionally that's causing our team to be frustrated? If you are experiencing a high amount of turnover, or if you know someone who's experiencing a high amount of turnover, perhaps this is a great spot for you to start. The other part here, and I want you to think about this for a minute. When was the last time that you received a compliment from one of your team members? Better yet, when was the last time that you gave a compliment or you acknowledged somebody for their efforts on your team? And if you did acknowledge them, what was the acknowledgement? Was it a simple passive, thanks for doing that? No, 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 that's really good. As you're walking out the door? Or was it a look in the eye? Thank you so much for doing that. That saved me a lot of time. Or I really see how you're giving effort towards this and I can see the improvement. Being able to communicate with your team and acknowledge their successes or their growth is such a huge thing. And I think it's an opportunity that we miss out on. I don't mean giving a compliment for a compliment's sake, but having a moment where you have intention and purpose with the words that you're saying. So there are 3 suggestions for you. Now, typically, I have a question that's showing up here. Who's got one for me? Pop that into the Q&A if we're wanting to do that. I'm going to kind of go through these. No, we're good. Alrighty. I'm going to get rid of these questions really quick so that I can see when they come up. Okay. So into number 3. When we're looking at number 3, and that's to talk about consistency. How do we create consistency within our team? And from 2 elite level managers right now, when we say, gosh, it took everyone to win today. It's not one person. This isn't an effort of one. This is an effort of many who need to show up every day to contribute to our success. And I love this one, right? This is what wins Grey Cups, right? Continuing to get better. Consistency in our success. We can be happy with a win, but we've got more to go. We're not satisfied. We need to be better. So when we have consistency, and this is probably one of the biggest gaps that I will share with you when I talk to managers, because our schedules are packed. I understand that we have packed schedules, and if we're wanting to grow our businesses, if we're wanting to grow our people, we need to be able to create some routine and process. So, are we meeting with our team members to share all of this information about KPIs and to share and communicate what the expectations are? Are we establishing those rhythms, whether follow-ups? Are we even doing reviews with our people anymore? Are they in your calendar? Show me your calendar, and I will show you your priorities. If you don't have, it's easier to move a meeting than it is to schedule it, right? So schedule the meeting, get it in there, and if you need to move it, you can. Are you meeting with your team every week? Every 2 weeks? Monthly? Maybe not at all, right? We need to be able to establish those routines. And of course, if you're hiring someone, so somebody indicated earlier that they're thinking of getting somebody on board, the newer your employee, the more frequent you need to be meeting with them. Hang on a second. Roger, thank you for this question. If you're recognizing a staff person's good work, is there a risk you may seem like it's not being received as a compliment by the staff person? I'm not sure how that would, if I'm recognizing it. I suppose that depends on how you're delivering the feedback when you're doing that. I love the question because you want to make sure that you're delivering it in the right way. And so I suppose there's always a risk, but to me, the bigger risk is not saying anything, if that is an answer to that question. How you're giving, whenever we're giving communication to somebody, there's 3 ways that we're doing it, or 3 elements to communication. The first one is going to be body language. So do we have eye contact, or our arms crossed? Are we looking away? Or are we focused on them? Tonality, of course, and how we're delivering that message, and then the spoken words. Now, for the most part, when we have all 3 of those present, physical, or that body language makes up 55% of the message. Tonality is 38. The words themselves are 7. So it's much better if you can do it face to face, if you can do it on video, right? The more elements that we involve, the less of a chance somebody is receiving that poorly, right? Yes, right. Yeah, I love that. I don't want to, so I think it depends on how, if you're sincere and you're authentic, I'm not sure how it would be received as cliche. Now, here's the risk, or one of the other things when we talked about DISC before, if I can go back a couple of slides, if I can. When we're looking at DISC with people, um, if some people like to receive, they don't want the public accolades, right? So if you give somebody information or feedback in front of a whole group, some people might receive that as insincere because, like, the only reason you're doing it is because we're in front of the whole group. So some people love that. For me, that's great, right? I want all of that. Some people, though, prefer it to be, side by side on the desk or over the phone, or to say, hey, you know what? I'm seeing that you're doing this, and I want to acknowledge you for it, right? It doesn't need to be a public display of a compliment. So understanding how your team likes to receive information is really key in understanding how to be able to give them that compliment. So I hope that answers your question. And thank you so much for that. Welcome them at any time. Uh, Consistency also means, when we're getting into that, about accountability, right? How do we know when we're holding somebody accountable to something? Well, we need to have KPIs, first of all, to hold them accountable, and understand there's um, a big movement out there. I think a lot of people think that managers are micromanaging when really what they're doing is holding them accountable to behaviors, right? And so if we establish what those behaviors are ahead of time, then we're going to be able to understand that holding somebody accountable to the behaviors that we came up and co-created together is not a punishment. It's simply saying, what did you do or what didn't you do, right? And then how do I support you in making sure that happens next week or next month? So holding people accountable is so important, and it's not micromanaging. So we want to manage the symptom or the system, not the symptoms. So when we're looking at this, do we have process problems or people issues, right? If most often, what I see most often is that it's process related. Now, if you want to blame the process, fine, then you need to blame the person who created the process or the lack of process, which is usually us. So we need to be able to establish a process to begin with, and then be able to hold people accountable to that specific process. So when we're looking at different steps for you to be able to create some consistency, schedule, let's say, weekly calls or meetings with people, 5 to 10 minutes. This does not need to be a long meeting, especially if you manage salespeople or anybody who's got a revenue target or an expectation around business development. Then being able to schedule those meetings. Hey, what's going on this week for you? They should know that already. What's going on this week for you, and how do I need to get out of your way or help you achieve that? Then your job, identify any kind of risks that might be part of that so you can support them through mitigating some of that risk. And at the end of the week, it's, how did you do? Where did we fall? How can I help you get back up? What needs to happen so that next week is more productive? But this is a 5 to 10 minute meeting. Use some sort of accountability tracker and bonus points if it's available to the entire team, right? We want to look at proactive or leading indicators versus the reactive or lagging indicators. I cannot change the score of the game once it's done, right? But if I play to a standard, then usually the score takes care of itself. If I know that these specific behaviors get me the outcome I'm looking for, then all I need to focus on are those behaviors, which ironically are 100% within my control or within your team's control. So when you identify what those KPIs are, those are the measurables, but the specific behaviors, that you need to see your team doing on a daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly basis, whatever it is in your world, so that they can see, especially if you've got more than one person on a team, everybody looks at it. Then we get competitive in nature, and nobody wants to be the person that's, at the bottom of that, right? So get the accountability tracker and activity tracker in place. And then we want to be able to create processes, of course, create those processes, and then you're able to reinforce them for all departments. And it's interesting going back to communication. When I had an activity tracker, now back in my early days with Sandler, I was hired originally as what we call an associate, which means I was responsible for selling as well as delivering the training. 2 years after I became an associate, I bought the business from my predecessor. So that's where we are now. But in the early days, I had completed my activity tracker. I had to do something like 100 cold calls, a couple of networking events a week, getting out into referral asking and all sorts of stuff. Now, that was to then produce several meetings, initial meetings, and then I was supposed to book subsequent meetings from there. So there was one particular week I remember that I did all of those behaviors. I did my calls, I did the networking events, I asked for referrals, all of those things. I didn't get a single meeting. Now, what did my boss do? What she did was give me a gift certificate to the LCBO because she wanted to acknowledge and celebrate me completing the behaviors. Now, as a result of that, the next week I did the same thing by completing all the behaviors, but then a whole bunch of people called me back. So then I was able to book twice the number of meetings that I normally had, which then put me on par for the month. Now I understand we can't have many weeks in a row where our people don't produce results, right? However, if we have a process in place and we know what activities need to be done, we can celebrate those, right? We can use the consistency and the celebration to create more consistency, right? So that's what we talk about when we're looking at consistency with our teams. Now, before I get to number 4, if you didn't take a picture of the QR code to get into the form, then I invite you to do that as well. This would be a great time for you to jump into it, provide a little feedback, and then be able to share, hey, do you want to get access to another, our executive briefing or our master class coming up, email, or book a call, or send the slides to you. All right, so then we're going to jump into number 4, and this confidence. And this isn't just how do we support our team with confidence, but how many of us, when we've had those mistakes, right? Success comes from wisdom, wisdom comes from experience, and experience comes from falling on our face a few times. And when we fall on our face, don't we kick our own tails and talk about confidence? And it was interesting because I was speaking to somebody earlier this week at an event, and he had just started his business and he was getting really busy and sounded a bit frustrated with where things were in the business. Overwhelmed, I think is maybe a better word, about how I feel so overwhelmed with what's going on. And it was really important. I said to him, what have you done? Imagine 1 year ago. So I want you to think about right now, for all the frustrations you have in your life, in your business, where were you 1 year ago? For most people, where they are now, and I get you want to get more, perhaps, or have things more efficient, but where you were a year ago, the growth that you've had over the last 12 months has been fantastic. And being able to acknowledge yourself for that growth provides you confidence. It gives you evidence that you can do more. So it's not just about how can I give confidence to my team, but how do I get more confident as well? It's really easy to lose our confidence, isn't it? So there's no curse words in here, but John Schneider, if anybody's paying attention to him, he drops the occasional curse word during his celebrations. So I love this phrase. How wonderful is it for your team to hear that this is what your coach thinks of you. I've quietly got a really good feeling about this team, seriously. Or for somebody saying, I even more than that, when one of your team members is saying this about you, how confident do you feel and how much confidence do they have in you? Right? You give Scott enough time to do anything, he's going to figure it out. How great is that? So when we look at confidence here, in the top right corner of your screen, you can see what we refer to as the belief wheel. And for us, the belief wheel talks about you have a certain belief. Now, maybe I'll make it a sales one because this is an easy one to use as an example. Or now we'll use the gym, right? We talk about going to the gym. The belief wheel, and I see a question pop up, so I'm just going to jump into that real quick before. Oh, yeah, right, Paul? Thank you. Agreed. People don't, it's not even in the last several months, like this happens often, right? Because we're so caught up in the day to day. And so if that's something, set a reminder on your phone as an example. That's another way to acknowledge the wins. So when we have this belief wheel, let's pretend we're going to the gym because that's an easy one that most of us can resonate with, right? We have this belief, like we want to get fit, we want to get stronger. So the belief is, I gotta go to the gym. So I wake up and I'm like, 5 a.m., don't want to go, don't want to go, don't want to go, right? Judgments, don't want to go. People are going to think I'm crazy for getting up this early. So, oh my God, what are you doing getting up so early, going to the gym? You're crazy. So either you don't want to go, really, don't go at all, or when you go, you give it kind of a half effort. And what happens, right? Means I don't want to go to the gym or I don't go. And that's what happens, right? When everybody starts really well in January and then they get out of the habit, right? We stop going. So there are two things that go to this. Number one, actions drive behavior. And you'll see that I have an asterisk there because action drives behavior when we believe that the goal is what we want to achieve. If we don't believe it's possible or in the realm of possibility, there's a different conversation there. However, if you set the belief in place, as in, I believe I can achieve certain things, then the belief alone is not going to carry you there. You need to be able to have actions which will then change your results. So it's important that we're all part of, or that your team understands, we all believe it can happen. And if we don't, then we need to have a conversation about that. And that can be a team conversation about what's going to happen. And then we need to create action around it. So the next part that we have is talking about how are you modeling your leadership, or how are your managers modeling leadership? If they are becoming panicked, if they are stressed, and this could sound like, hey, boss, how are you? And you answer with something like, living the dream, right? How many of it, like, I hate that answer. Living the dream. Whose dream? Yours? Doesn't sound like yours, right? So, how are we answering these questions? It's those little moments that up to being a great leader. So, are we confident in our own leadership? Are we confident in the decisions that we're making? And if we're not, are we setting up the rules of play so that our team knows that, hey, if I make a mistake, we're cool, we're going to be able to figure it out together? Or does your team believe that they have your confidence so that they have the confidence to make a mistake? Because here's what I can tell you. If your team does not believe that you have their back, they won't just make mistakes. The worst part about that is they'll do nothing. There will be inaction. Now, inaction also doesn't get you results, right? In fact, it can affect you negatively, but I'll take somebody who tries something and makes a mistake that I can adjust than somebody who's too scared to move. And if they're too scared to move, that's my fault, right? I haven't given them the tools to make them feel confident that if they make a mistake, it's okay. I've got them. We're going to figure it out. And then we talk about same thing with celebrate progress, not perfection, right? We need to be able to tell people that incremental gains are so key. I can tell you from training salespeople for the longest time that most often the only time a salesperson sees a victory, how they define victory, is making a sale. That's it. That's not disqualifying. That's not I tried a technique and I did okay at it. That's not I did something good or moved the needle this week. There's so many points before we achieve our outcome that we need to be able to celebrate success. And we need to get into progress because we're our own worst critics. So like I said, the example before, where were you a year ago before we get to before we get to now, and all of the little wins that you needed to have. Talk about playing to a standard, not to the score. When we play to a standard, when we know what behaviors are expected of us, then when we do those consistently, then we breed confidence, right? And what I find it interesting that confidence doesn't come from status quo. Confidence means that we actually have to take a risk, and maybe we mess up at it, but we were okay. We took a risk and we got better. That's where confidence comes from. We have to make a mistake first. We have to take a leap of faith. And when we succeed on the other side of it, that's where our confidence comes from. So 3 things that you can do when you're looking at creating some confidence. And I'm going to talk about this term journal. Now, when people don't know me and I talk about journaling, a lot of people think about stuff, I don't want to talk about like Dear Diary or I had a ham sandwich today. That's not what I mean by a journal. Journals talk about, and it's not gratitude. If we want to start with gratitude journals, that's a beautiful spot to start, right? And there's more that we can do with that. So if you've never done journaling before, I would start with keeping a gratitude journal. What's one thing that you're grateful for every day? Now, if you're doing journaling a little bit here and there, as a leader, and you can do this for your team as well, but as a leader, one of the things that you can do is use this acronym called BAGELS. There's 2 G's in bagels, but I'll tell you what those are. So bagels are, B is the behaviors. What are the critical tasks or behaviors that I need to do today? And maybe you want to write down only 5 of those critical tasks. But what are the behaviors that I need to do today? What is the attitude that I need to have when I complete these tasks? How do I have that? Or what are the affirmations if we have that? And that's not just I want $1 million, but affirmations in what kind of person do I need to be to achieve those particular tasks? And G is a gratitude, right? So we include gratitude in here. The second G is what are my goals? What's my 30-day, maybe my daily, but my 30-day, 60-day, 1-year, 5-year goals? Am I writing those down? Am I reminding myself of those goals all the time? E gives me evaluation. Now, evaluation is on what did I do the day before? Did I feel good about what I did the day before? And if not, how do I need to go to the L? What are my lessons learned from that? So how do I evaluate myself? And that could be a 7 out of 10, 10 out of 10, 2 out of 10 in terms of achieving my goals from yesterday or my behaviors. Well, what are the lessons learned that I have from the day before? So I can mitigate that and ensure my success going forward. And then what are my successes from the day before? So there are some journal prompts for you. That is one example. You can look for all sorts of those. Google has lots. You can also lead that belief wheel session with your team. And I think right now this is important because some people have a difficulty with all of the news. How much news are they watching? What is the sound bite that they keep hearing over and over again? And so if we believe that the sky is falling, the sky might be falling, or at least it'll feel like that. Back in 2008, I was doing some networking with a painter. and this painter had a button on his overalls, and the button said, "I refuse to participate in this recession." What do you think that did to his belief as it related to an economic downturn? We've had our share of economic downturns in the last several years. So, what are the limiting beliefs that we have or that our team holds, and how do we need to support them shifting that belief? I like that we know our process, so we are capable. That's like John Schneider saying, my team knows what they need to do. And then celebrate those wins. That's how we're able to get into creating more confidence, like I said earlier. So, we are at, well, we're a little bit early, which is kind of fun. So we're a little bit early here. So I wanted to give a chance, again, open the floor for questions, pop those into the Q&A section. Here's the QR code again, but if you need to get in touch with me for any reasons, would love to have that. I know Mike talked about providing the contact information and subsequent emails that the chamber is sending out for all of the webinars from this week. And before I finish up, I want to say just a huge thank you to the Chamber to putting on this type of event for Small Business Week. Network can get a bit tiring, so being able to share this with you and showing up here today has been absolutely wonderful, and I really appreciate the opportunity that that the Hamilton Business Center and the Chamber have put on for us to be here and share this today. So thank you so much. I've got 2 questions in here, I think. I just saw that come up. Says Travis. Oh, you're welcome, Paul. Oh, thanks, Michelle. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to show this. Guys, I have to tell you this fun little thing. So in here before, I have this baseball from back in the day, and I think it's a good omen. It's signed by Jose Bautista, Edwin Encarnacion, George Bell, old school if you remember that, and Buck Martinez. So go Jays. Let's go Blue Jays.
Thanks,
Yeah,
Steph.
right?
That's awesome and great presentation, and what a way to wrap up Small Business Week, and not to mention feeling pretty inspired heading into the weekend after hearing your words. For me specifically, I think the stat you dropped about body language and tone mattering more than the actual words coming out of your mouth was pretty thought provoking too, especially in this world now where a lot of us are taking meetings virtually as opposed to in person. That's some interesting perspective. I want to say just quickly before we let everyone go and get back to their afternoon and get to their weekend, Stephanie touched on it, but we will be publishing all of these sessions online at hamiltonchamber.ca, and we'll be sending them to your inbox as well. So if you missed out on any other great topics or presentations this week, or wanted to rewatch maybe some of what Steph had to say, that'll be ending back up in your inbox at some point next week. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say, with the conclusion of Small Business Week, it's a great springboard into Hamilton Day next weekend. So if you're not familiar with what Hamilton Day is, it's the Chamber's citywide Shop Local campaign. Everything from concerts, markets, activities, promotions, all the BIAs involved across the city. So great opportunity to get out next weekend and really shop local and support local, which is important now so more than ever. So if you're looking to start mapping out your weekend, planning your weekend, all of the details of what's happening across the city is available at hamiltonday.ca. So please be sure to check that out, and we'll see you out and about next weekend. So appreciate City of Hamilton Economic Development as well, our partner on this week. Keith and Kristen from Hamilton Business Center, fantastic having you guys on board, and thanks so much for everything you do for the business community. And I believe that's it. Thanks again to Steph from Sandler. Go Ticats, go Jays, and enjoy your weekend, everyone. Okay.
Take care.
Thank you.